Hey everyone, welcome to our podcast. This is my story where we talk about the weird reality of rad. If you're one of our loyal listeners, welcome back. If you're new to our podcast, be sure to check out our channel and get acquainted with what we talk about on here and the therapeutic parenting techniques that we use and that our parents talk about. Either way, it's great to have you join us here today for this episode. If you haven't already, be sure you're subscribed to our channel and you have turned on notifications so you can get our episodes straight to your inbox on Tuesday mornings. You can also check out our other social media if you haven't done that yet. We have a Facebook page and an Instagram account, and we post on both of those on a daily basis. This podcast is all about interviews with parents and kids and professionals who come and share their stories on a wide range of experiences, anything from their craziest happenings to sharing their journeys of healing with us. Today is Tuesday, June 23rd. It's our 17th episode. And joining me today for this interview is Nikki. She lives in Ohio and she is a therapeutic tutor who has worked with kids with rad for the last couple of years. And she's going to tell us what her experience has been in a classroom type setting working with kids with reactive attachment disorder. This is the first part of her episode, so make sure you check back in next week to hear the second part where she'll talk more about dealing with behaviors in a classroom teacher-student type setting. Alright, I'm really excited about this and the whole concept behind therapeutic tutoring, so let's get into it. Alright, hello Nikki, and welcome to our podcast. Thank you so much for doing this interview. We're super excited. You are the only therapeutic tutor that we have on our podcast so far, so it's going to be great to hear from you. And for everyone listening in, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah. First, I'm really excited to be on the podcast. I'm Nicci Price, and I am from Ohio, Covington, Ohio, and I'm a therapeutic tutor. So I do a range from teaching kids and then also just supplementing and helping them work on their life.
Awesome. Tell us what your story is. How did you get into working with kids with rad, and how did you get into tutoring kids with rad?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it kind of is a long story and a short story. So I went to a Nancy Thomas seminar about 3 years ago, and from there I went to an attachment camp because I was going to have students that had rad, and I wanted to be able to support the family and learn about what they were dealing with. And from there, I was hooked. I very distinctly felt like that this is what I was supposed to be doing. These parents had such a burden, and I, along with a whole support team, could help these children become healthy. And that was 2 years ago. And from there, I have been to one more camp and have done different training. And now I switched from the classroom to tutoring.
What's a special part of your journey or your story that you would want to tell other people, either who are tutoring or teaching kids with rad or working with them or supporting families?
The progress is slow, but there is progress that is made. Some days I go into work and I think, oh man, we're getting nowhere. You know, the kid isn't interested in working on their life. The family just, feels defeated. I can feel defeated, but then as soon as you feel that, something just sparks. The child gets a little bit stronger. I might plug in the Mozart and I'm able to continue for another day. And, the parent starts seeing another glimmer of hope. And that is just so incredibly special to get to be part of.
Yeah, it is. And then I always like to ask people, because our kids do crazy and interesting sort of things. Has there been a moment for you where something happened and you thought back and you're like, I can't believe that just happened?
Yeah. With the tutoring, there's two stories that come to mind. With tutoring, I was just getting into doing the in-home kind of care versus the classroom care. And you know, each family has a different setup for how homeschooling goes. And I didn't quite know, where those lines were between like parent, letting go of that homeschooling and me taking it over. So the teacher keys were still at the home. And I assumed that they were in the parent's possession, and the parent assumed that they were my possession. It was a very good lesson in not assuming. And
I can tell where this is going.
Yep. I come into work the next day and I'm like, wow, this kid's an A student all of a sudden. And the kid all but told on themselves without telling, like, are you going to figure it out or not? And I said, what happened? And they shared, I used all the answer keys. Well, they were there and nobody had them. So I didn't know that the classic, I don't know,
yep.
situation. And I told this student, I said, what happened? We went through the process, and I said, what can you do to help yourself? You come up with a solution so that way you're not cheating. And they said, maybe if you took them, it wouldn't be tempting to me. And so that was a moment of, wow, good job coming up with something. And, from now on, they stay in my car.
Yeah, that's probably a good place for them.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So transition times can be tricky, but yeah.
Okay, and then you said you had 2. What's your other one?
Oh, yes. And then in the classroom setting, the child knew that they were doing the program. They knew no hugs, no nothing. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, middle of a math lesson or something, the child comes up and says, excuse me, Miss Nikki, can I have a hug? And I'm just like those moments you're speechless, like, what? And
yeah,
no, you can't. And it's just those funny moments, like, where you really have to keep on your toes because they will get you every time. And so, yeah,
yep.
that just struck me funny, as I was like, well, no, you can't. And I wouldn't give any child a hug in the middle of math lesson.
Yeah. And sometimes you think, or they know better, and it still
Mm-hmm.
surprises you that they come up with these random things at
right.
random times.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, that's funny. All right, so I have a list of questions here I want to ask you, and we can discuss the questions as we go through. And I think for a lot of parents, they struggle with, do they keep their child at home and homeschool? And that puts mom as the caregiver and the teacher, which causes so many problems and power struggles and control battles.
Mm-hmm.
And then they think, well, should I send him to school where we get teachers and teachers' aides and principals and whoever else is at school who don't understand therapeutic care?
Right.
They don't understand the brain problems our kids have. And our kids get away with so much nonsense and triangulation and manipulation. So I think having a therapeutic tutor ideally is what every family needs. We don't have very many. Like I said, you're the only one I know who actually does this. So I think it's going to be really great for parents to hear, how this works and what you do to make it work. And, the kind of setting and everything. Mm-hmm. So the first question I want to ask you is, how would you describe therapeutic tutoring? And how is it different from regular tutoring or regular teaching?
Yeah, I would definitely say first that it's important to not send kids, if there's an option not to untrained teachers that have no clue, that are not going to support the family in their healing journey. Yeah, it's different because the priority is on helping the child work on their life first and foremost. That is what I go into my day focused on. And the schooling is very important, but it's second to working on the child's life. Whether it's just maintaining routine each day or making sure that that they're respectful, responsible, and fun to be around. those things are my top priority. And then from there, when the child is strong, they get to work on school. And some situations I've been the teacher, the full-on teacher, every subject, and some they have had DVD school and I act more as the tutor. And I think both work, but I definitely have seen where the tutoring position works a lot better. There's less chance of bonding between teacher and student, and they have to take a lot of that responsibility, and it's up to them whether or not they pass their grade, instead of a teacher, trying to force, something to happen that isn't there. But it gives them a lot of responsibility, but with the support to work on their life.
Right. So rather than in a school setting, they focus more on academics.
Right.
And then social behaviors, you would work more on social behaviors and healing. And when that's in place, they're ready to learn academically.
Absolutely. Sometimes in the beginning of working with a child, they might only get a third of a day's worth of academics in, and that's okay. They pick it up right in the same spot the next day when they're stronger, because sometimes their brains can't handle it. They only can do a certain amount because they're already behind. They're already dealing with everything. And, sometimes it's more important for them to work on the brain-based stuff a little bit before they can go on to the academics.
Yeah. And then I just want to throw in here, for people who aren't necessarily familiar with the therapeutic practices we use, you mentioned not bonding or hugging the child. Do you want to just quickly explain that for people who might be wondering what you're talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. So in a normal, everyday school setting, it wouldn't be uncommon for a teacher to hug a child or, fist bump or, whatever else, give them compliments. Oh, you have a cute dress on. Or, oh, I really like your new shoes. Did you get a haircut? We don't do any of that because they need to be bonding with their parents. If they're treating their parents like junk each day, they don't need to be treating me with, like I'm their favorite person. Their mom and dad needs to be their favorite person, not me. And so I keep it very, very strict and professional. And I do allow a little bit of talking as responsibility is established. And when they start working on their life, then maybe at lunchtime, as they're getting their lunch, they might be able to tell me a story. And then that only happens when they've worked on their life consistently. And then that privilege goes right away when, if they choose to sabotage, that privilege.
Right. So by not having any kind of bonding or, chit-chatty fun stuff with you, that makes the child reach more towards their parents once they're home with them.
Yes, absolutely. I want school to not be an exciting or something that I am giving them that mom can't.
Right.
I want to direct everything, even those stories. If it's something that I feel like is something that, really should be told to mom or dad, I just say, I'm not, I don't listen to stories that are family stories, or I don't, that's, I just come up with something, whatever it might be, to direct them back to home. Oh, that's a really good story that you could go tell your dad, when he gets home. Do you know what time he gets home? And, just point the conversation back to parents. We don't want to provide anything that the parents can't.
Yeah, perfect. So kind of along with that, what's your biggest challenge? What has it been in tutoring therapeutically?
It is difficult because you do know that the academics are part of why you're there. Every parent wants their child to pass the grade and within a certain time frame and, whatnot. And so if you have a week that is just meltdown city, that you're a week behind. And so that is something to keep focused, that our priority is this child's healing. And so that can become a challenge. Do you assign homework? Do you not? Is this going to be placed on the mom to figure out, or will the child, take that responsibility? It totally depends child by child.
So the next one I want to ask you is about avoiding or minimizing triangulation and manipulation, which is something our kids do a lot. And you're in the position, you're an authority figure, you're the teacher, and then there's mom and dad. So what are some things that you do to avoid or minimize that happening?
Well, mom and I have to have conversation. We try to make it happen at least once a week, and then we are always texting, just here and there. The minute I even might have a question of, a situation, but at the same time, you don't want to overburden the parent with your responsibility. And so it's just keeping that balance of communication with each other, and foreseeing situations before they happen.
Yeah, perfect. All right, that brings us to the end of the first part of our interview with Nikki about therapeutic tutoring. Make sure you join us again next week for episode 18, where she's going to continue talking about tutoring and tell us how she deals with some of the behaviors that come up in a classroom type setting. Thank you for joining us here today for this episode. Make sure you check out the description below for more information about the Radish Ranch and about our podcast. We also have links down there for our social media if you haven't checked that out yet. And subscribe to our channel, turn on notifications so you can get our episode next Tuesday morning straight to your inbox. The songs on this podcast are The Way Things Go and Come Down, both written and recorded by French Press and used here with their permission. This Is My Story is brought to you by the Radish Ranch. I'm your host, Karen Potra, and I will see you next week. Stay awesome.